Okay, so it's the day before the second Test match in Vishakhapatnam, and this is the Sky Cricket Podcast where we're going to preview that second Test match. I've made my way down to Vishakhapatnam, which is a lovely city actually. It's about halfway between Kolkata and Chennai on the Bay of Bengal, so nice and breezy. The waves and the surf coming in. Nasser, not quite the same for you in Chelmsford.
No, there's no surf coming in as far as I can see in Chelmsford. It's a pleasant day, to be honest. The weather's picked up in sunny Chelmsford. It's a bit lighter at the start of the day and it's a bit lighter at the end of the day, but it is not Vizag. I'm so jealous of you being in Vizag. And England have just announced their side, Michael. Breaking news. Hit us with the side.
Amazing, really, isn't it? Yeah, they've made two changes. Jimmy Anderson is back. He's back in place of Mark Wood, but they're keeping the same balance of the side. So Shoaib Bashir, the young off spinner from Somerset, just 20 years of age, he comes in for Jack Leach, who's been hobbling around ever since the end of that first test in Hyderabad. Watched him at the nets yesterday, still had a massive strapping on his leg. Ben Stokes ruled him out yesterday. But they didn't announce the team. They wanted to take another look at the pitch, which they've done today. England were down there for another optional training session. They've looked at that pitch and they've decided that it looks as dry as perhaps the one in Hyderabad. I don't think it's as scrubbed at the ends as the one in Hyderabad was, but they've decided to go with the same balance of teams. So just one seamer and three spinners. It is a remarkable selection, isn't it? I mean, we've seen that the balance is the same, just the one seamer and three spinners, which we thought was and four if you include Joe Root, which we thought was remarkable enough last time. But just the nature and makeup of this attack, you've got a 41-year-old Anderson, the lone seamer, with 183 test caps between him over the last 10 years or so. And then you've got the three spinners with, how many caps have they got? You've got Rayan Ahmed with 2, Tom Hartley with 1, and Shoaib Bashir yet to be capped. So 3 between them.
I know you're a betting man. You used to come into the dressing room with a racing post under your arm. A couple of years ago, what would have been the odds for the India second test match away from home, Rayan Ahmed, Hartley and Bashir? What would have been the odds of those three being your spinners? Incredible story.
It is an amazing thing. I don't think that Rayan Ahmed and Shoaib Bashir were even born when Jimmy made his test match debut, which was, well, you were playing, it was that long ago. So it's a measure really of how remarkable a team this is. Let's reflect a little bit on Shoaib Bashir, because obviously we've seen Rayan Ahmed, we've seen Tom Hartley in action. Both of those guys did really well on their debuts, and now England have thrown Shoaib Bashir a cap. So just 20 years of age. I mean, listen to Ben Stokes yesterday, and he said that it was a social media clip that first alerted him to the young man's potential. So he played in the middle of last year against Essex and bowled quite well at Alistair Cook, and the social media team, the County Championship social media team, put out a little clip of him bowling at Cookie, who was, a couple of times he beat the outside edge and Cookie was groping for the ball, which he's a very good player at spin, and you don't beat Alistair Cook on length that much. So that was the first thing that alerted Ben Stokes to this lad's potential. And then he forwarded that clip on the little WhatsApp group that he shares with Brendan McCullum and Rob Key, which usually has kind of golfing chat and golf swings on it and that kind of thing, but not only golf chat. And that's really where the first conversation started to bubble up around Shoaib Bashir.
I read your piece the other day, and what I found interesting in that piece is the shift of how now they look for a type of cricketer. Obviously, going to India, they've done all their research, the whole high release points, bowling it at pace, bowling it into the surface, as opposed to our era where you would look at stats. I think it was Kesey's saying, wasn't he, when he worked with us, stats are for prats. I'm not sure we can use that in our podcast, but that was his saying. It's a complete shift of, we used to look at, right, who's getting runs, who's getting wickets. Now they are specifically looking for conditions. The previous regime used to do that a little bit. They used to be a bit more horses for courses. They got it wrong occasionally, but really specifically now, they don't worry too much about stats. They're just looking for a type of cricketer. And would you agree, from what we've seen in that footage, that Bashir is that type of cricketer that would be successful in India?
Well, what they like about him is not dissimilar to Tom Hartley. Actually, they've taken a view that the spinners who've been successful here in India over the last few years have been quite tall and they drive the ball into the surface and bowl very quickly. Obviously, that was the rationale behind Tom Hartley's selection. And Bashir, they think the same, actually. I watched them in the nets yesterday, and you get a sense of how tall he is. He's probably got an inch on Tom Hartley. I reckon he's 6'4" or something, quite a tall lad. Big, long fingers, Monty Panesar type fingers. Monty had very long fingers, really wrap the fingers around the ball and give it a rip. And that's exactly what Shoaib Bashir has got as well. Ben hadn't met him until they went to that camp in Abu Dhabi, which was a 10-day camp ahead of the first test. So they met there. Obviously, then the context of the visa issue, which just adds a little bit more to this story, the fact that he had to stay behind, he had to fly back to England to get his visa stamped and confirmed. And then he arrived halfway through the morning session of that last day in Hyderabad. So his first experience of being at a test match, he witnessed one of the great England wins. So that was a fantastic moment. Stokes and McCullum said that they gave him a big cheer. All the players gave him a big cheer when he walked into the dressing room for the first time, having landed in India. And now he gets his cap. So it's a remarkable story. I mean, he's only played, 6 first-class games. He's got 10 first-class wickets at 67. I can't really think that there's been a more remarkable selection in the time that I've been watching the England team and observing the England team. I know Rayan Ahmed only played 3 games, but England have taken a lot of kind of chances with wrist spinners over the years. You'll remember Chris Schofield, who played under you, and Mason Crane and Scott Borthwick. They've taken lots of punts on leg spinners, but a kind of regulation finger spinner, normally they've got into the team after showing, a fair bit in county cricket. But you're right, what they're doing is they're saying, rather than just, getting the county averages out and saying, right, who are the best 11 cricketers in England? Let's pick them. They're saying, what does this team need right now? And what are the conditions that we're playing in? What gives us the best chance of success? So they start from that point, and then they work backwards and say, right, forget who's top of the averages, which cricketer fits the bill, which is the guy that fits the requirements that we think we need. Now, there's always a bit of subjective judgment in there still, and they certainly won't get selection right all the time. That's an impossibility. But it's producing some very interesting selections right now. I can't really think that there have been selections that have been more interesting in the time that I've been watching the England team.
And they've all been successful, haven't they? Or 99% of them have been successful. So you can't really doubt the policy, whether you go back to Will Jacks, Rayan Ahmed himself, Josh Tongue, Hartley. There have been others. There's been a long list of lads that have come in, either on debut or coming back in or whatever, that people wouldn't have thought of as the next cab off the rank. And they've all come in and done well. And the statement that's obviously used is that this is a great environment to come into. What do you think is so good about the environment that they all feel comfortable straight away?
Yeah, I think that's the other aspect of it. I mean, we touched on selection, and that's one thing, getting the right people in the right places. But then obviously the management of talent as well. And what it clearly suggests is that combination is good right now, that they're making some good picks, and then the talent is being managed in the right way. What is it about this environment? I think it's probably just that it's quite a caring environment. I mean, a lot's been spoken about the fact that Brendan McCullum and Ben Stokes are trying to make Test match cricket fun. They're trying to make it a good place to be, a place where people want to be, the dressing room that they want to be in, because Test cricket's got its challenges for one, and a lot of cricketers are saying in certain parts of the world, partly because of the finances, but also, they might just not fancy the hard grind of Test cricket, that, we're gonna give it away and play some franchise cricket. So they're trying to make the environment as fun as possible. And I suspect it's a pretty caring environment. If you look at somebody like Zach Crawley, for example, who went through the ringer for 12 months, 18 months with his performances, they backed him all the way. So I think there's a feeling that this environment will back you as much as possible. In fact, Ben yesterday, speaking about Shoaib Bashir, just said, if he does play, I want to make sure he enjoys this game as much as possible, because you only ever make your Test match debut once, and you want to look back and kind of realise that it's a great time. It's the best of days, really. So I think it's those kind of things. In fact, during the nets yesterday, I caught up with Tom Hartley just to reflect a little bit on his performance at Hyderabad. So maybe we'll just hear from him for the next 5 minutes or so.
The king of Ormskirk, or at least the most popular man in Ormskirk, because the club put on free booze on Sunday evening. Yeah. I bet you've had a whirlwind 48 hours, haven't you?
Yeah, it was phenomenal. I had so many messages, so much support coming through. All my friends and family have been watching, getting up at 4 a.m, so I think they've been pretty tired last couple of days.
And a few went down to the cricket club, did they, Sunday night?
Yeah, I think there were a few pints and maybe a few sore heads Monday morning, but it was great to see, and they've done a lot for me over the years, and probably wouldn't be here without them.
Better than potting plants then as well. You've had a time at your father's garden centre, haven't you?
Yeah, I've done whenever I get a chance, and whenever they go on holiday, I'm just someone who can look after the place for them. So, I really enjoy it. It gets me away from cricket sometimes, and it's a good distraction.
And will your dad come out? Is he planning to come out? Do you know or not?
He's coming out to Abu Dhabi for a little break, so it'd be nice to see him then.
Okay. Yeah. Let's go back a little bit, because obviously it's a surprising selection in some ways for the tour. Did you have an inkling that you were in with a chance, or did it come a little bit out of the blue?
A little bit out of the blue. I was hoping to, at least get 1, maybe 2 games out here. Obviously knew the wickets would turn quite a lot, but then to play the first, and then Baz kind of joked about opening the bowling, and then it wasn't until I realised what the team was that he was actually being serious. But no, it's just fantastic just to start off like that.
And how nervous were you on that first day, or as you ran up for the first ball?
Yeah, I was really nervous. I was just hoping I'd land it, and then as soon as it went for 6, I was like, all right, okay, here we go. But no, it was great, and they tucked into me and tried to, and it was nice to pull it back at the end.
I mean, in that opening spell, I think 9 overs 63, the young left-hander got after you. But did you feel you bowled as badly as the figures suggest, or it was just a case of a batter just getting on top of you?
I felt like it wasn't one of my best spells, but I definitely wasn't one of the worst. I've definitely bowled worse. I felt it was coming out nice, maybe not too much on it, but there would be nerves in there, and I think I just got a bit hurried and tried to do everything a little too fast, and the way they came after me was fair play to them.
And was it difficult, because their spinners had obviously spun it quite sharply on that first day, and suddenly the pitch seemed to get a little bit slower and turning a little bit less, and that comparison therefore didn't make life easier either?
No, obviously I was scratching my head. I was like, well, they've ragged it, what am I doing so wrong, but obviously that wasn't quite the case. I think the pitch hardened up a little bit tacky on day 1. But it's just how good a bowlers they are, really, and there's a long way for me to come learning from them.
You said you slowed things up a little bit. Was that just your own decision making to do that? Was it chatting with Jeeton or others? I mean, the natural thing when you're nervous is to hurry everything through.
Yeah. On day 4, I had a good chat with Jeeton in the morning, and we really just focused on slowing things down, trying to let the action do the work. And then just have like a little bit more emphasis on bowling arm speed, which really helped just to get them final few revs on the ball.
How much confidence did you take from the batting as well? Because obviously you played well in both innings, but that partnership of 80 with Ollie Pope in the second innings really got you up to a fantastic score.
Yeah, it really settled me down. Obviously the figures in the first innings weren't great, but to get a few runs, at least I could say I've contributed to the game. And that partnership thankfully got us up to a winning total.
And favourite wickets in that second innings? There's 7 to choose from, which is fantastic, but I don't know, I would have thought that the wickets of Rohit Sharma and Bharat, the keeper, were especially pleasing.
I think Rohit was great, and then I think Bharat was pretty special, because obviously they put on a good partnership, him and Ashwin, and it was sort of, the tables were just turning a little bit, it was a bit in the middle, but getting him out and then meaning we could finish the game that evening was fantastic.
I mean, it's an obvious question, but that must be your best moment in the game.
Yeah, I think so. Just a sense of relief, and seeing the faces on all the lads. They were just over the moon. And obviously first game, I don't know what loss feels like, and I don't know what that sort of feels like, but I'm starting to get an idea.
And you've come here, Visakhapatnam, India, obviously 1 or 2 problems. Jadeja injured, KL Rahul injured. It seems that the momentum has completely shifted in the last 8 days or so. Is there a sense in the team that there's a chance to almost nail down the series here?
Yeah, we're really going to pounce on this. Having Jadeja injured, a massive blow for them. But we've just not got to get ahead of ourselves really, and play what's in front of us. But there's a definite feeling of we can turn the screw here.
Okay, well done. Many congratulations.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Cheers.
Well, it was terrific to catch up with Tom, who I felt was still on a bit of a high, Nas, after that amazing win in Hyderabad and his 7 wickets in the second innings. And I guess the difficulty is, you feel like you're in a bit of a whirlwind 48 hours after that. Everybody will be ringing you, friends, family. You'll be looking at social media and all the great things that are being said about you. I guess the challenge then is to put that to one side. I always say to my young lad and other young cricketers, it's the next innings and the next game that counts, not the one that's gone, because you can't do anything about what's happened, whether it's been good or bad, and you kind of have to focus pretty quickly on the next game now.
Yeah, I don't know if Bazball allows you to do that. I don't know all these old sayings that we used to. The old saying I thought of was never get too high and never get too down about the game. I used to do that occasionally, get too down. And Tom Hartley's had both extremes in one game. Up front in those first 9 overs, he could have easily got 2 down and felt like this is not where he should be. And then he gets 7 for in the second innings. He could think that he's cracked it. I'm sure, listening to that interview, he feels a very sort of he seems a very down-to-earth, rounded sort of lad who won't do neither really. And the first one, not getting 2 down, I think comes from the captain, comes from Ben Stokes and the way he captained him and the way he backed him. I think anyone in that team will tell you that the skipper's got their back, and that was shown by the way Stokes has not only managed Hartley, but managed any young lad that's come into the dressing room.
Which brings me neatly to Gavin Hamilton's tweet on the back of that first Test match in Hyderabad, Nas. Now, he says, that's how you captain a debutant, Ben Stokes. Outstanding support and faith in talent. If Ben Stokes had been captaining Gavin Hamilton in Johannesburg that day, he'd have got hundreds in both innings and 10 for. What were you doing, Nas?
I sort of read between the lines on that tweet was that my captain in Johannesburg was absolutely useless. I've seen Gavin since then at dinners and round various cricket grounds. We've got on so well. I don't know what I could have done. He bagged a pair and didn't get a wicket. I don't know if that was my fault, but I take full responsibility. But it does show. I mean, listen, in my era, I used to look at, the 2 I hold out were like Vaughan and Trescothick. When they came in to the dressing room, you immediately saw them in the corner and they almost looked after themselves. But I guess in our era, there were people coming in with quite a bit of experience that didn't need that much man management. I'd say in this era, when you do have a young Bashir, you can imagine the nerves he'll feel tomorrow morning. You imagine Hartley in his first Test match, or Rayan Ahmed. I gave him his cap in that huddle in Pakistan, and his dad was there. These are really raw, inexperienced cricketers, and it's not only just Ben Stokes; it's McCullum, and it's also the team that need to get around him. The one thing I wouldn't throw at this team, you could easily look at Bazball and think it's a complete, gamble and joke-a-thon and golf and wine and everyone's just having a laugh. Actually, when I've been, I don't know how you feel about it, when I've been around this team, I feel it. What was the McCullum saying? Live like it's your last day, but plan for the future. And that's what I see about this team and why it is such a good environment. They do play like it's their last day of Test match cricket and or it's your first game of club cricket and we're going to go out and enjoy it and take away the fear of failure. But do not mistake that with meticulous planning and looking ahead as well. I was lucky enough to go in the team room at the end of the Pakistan series, and McCullum planning and telling them the plans for the future. He was meticulous. So don't confuse this team with some kind of, we're going to give everyone a go and see what happens. They're going to give people a go, but they have planned to this point, and they'll plan for the future as well.
One more thing on the team before we move on from that topic. What do you think there was any thought about playing the two-seamer, slightly changing the balance, given the absence of Leach, and then you've got that inexperience of Hartley and Bashir, and you've got Root as well. I wondered whether Rayan Ahmed's position was debated at all in terms of they could play Wood and Anderson, and then you've got the steadier bowlers in Bashir and Hartley, the finger spinners, and Root. And because Rayan Ahmed, he's probably as good a batter as he is bowler at the moment, and Stokes didn't give him that many overs the other day. Probably sees him as a bowler to bowl in particular times in the game, whether it's at the tail end or when you're well in front in the game. He's not, on the first day, he's not somebody you're going to be throwing the ball to and saying, give me 20 overs. So I wonder whether that came into their thinking or calculations, whether, to slightly change the balance and play two seamers. They've obviously not done that.
Yeah, I think it's the inexperience. When you are so inexperienced and so raw, your ups and downs are so extreme, as we've seen with Tom Hartley in one game. So I think if they did have a bit more, I think in the last game, for example, I think they probably saw Hartley as more of a threat than Rayan Ahmed. But Ahmed was ahead in the pecking order, played in Pakistan as the second spinner, got 5 on debut. So really, he should have played, but they probably saw Hartley as the better bowler. So they thought, well, there's not a lot in it for the seamers. We might as well play both. Now here, they're thinking, right, okay, we haven't got Leach, and now we've got a couple of inexperienced spinners. So if one of them has a bad day, then Joe Root's going to be doing a lot of bowling. So I think they've played all three again. Jimmy's back. I think they're always going to rotate their seamers. Looking back at the last game in Vizag, we were there, or the last England game, I think Anderson and Broad took wickets. So there must be something in it for the seamers, unless it's a completely different pitch.
It's sometimes said, and I think this is not true actually, that historically and traditionally England captains have struggled to captain spin. But I think if you went way back to periods when English cricket was played on uncovered pitches, for example, most county sides then would have two spinners. Spin would play a huge part in the game because of the fact that you might play on wet pitches. And also in the old days of 3-day championship cricket, I'm going way back now, you had to kind of manipulate and maneuver games to set up a declaration on the third day. And then obviously, again, spin would often come into it. You started your career at Essex under a former England captain and an Essex captain, Keith Fletcher, who had a reputation as somebody who was masterful captain of spin. Is that not so?
Absolutely. I learned, if anything, I learned it all off Fletcher. A brilliant player of spin, but also a brilliant captain of spin because of the environment. We played on our outgrounds that have gone out the game a little bit. So we played Colchester, Southend, Ilford. They played Leighton a bit before my time. And all our outgrounds used to turn. And we would be playing against the likes of Embury and Tufnell. We would have, at the start of my career, the likes of Ackfield and East, and then Peter Such and John Childs. Pitches used to turn. It used to be a completely different pace of game. Spin bowled a lot more. I think Suchy bowled like 60 overs in an innings at Southend or Colchester one year. So I learnt so much from Fletch that stood me in good stead. That luckily I went to India fairly early on as a captain, Pakistan, Sri Lanka. We won in Pakistan, and Sri Lanka did okay in India with a depleted attack. But I'd seen Fletch captain. I'd played with spinners, played against spinners. But it was a point Shane used to make a lot about cricket in general, about the captaining of spin. And Shane used to think that a lot of English captains in general didn't believe in their spinners enough. A couple of bad balls and their whistle. He made them defensive spinners. What was his saying? Defend with the field, attack with the ball, and vice versa. So I think, again, that's where Ben Stokes is really good. There are times I noticed in Pakistan with Leach that he would have that mid-on 3/4 of the way back. He wouldn't just be all on attack. I noticed in the last test match, very much when it's spinning, you have in-out fields. And maybe in this test, I know you've been at the ground, you've been seeing some of the Indians remarkably playing their sweeps and reverse sweeps. Now, Rohit tried one in the other go. I know it's a shot Rohit's been working on, but it's almost making India think, watching the way Duckett and Pope have been playing, and they're almost trying to copy England's batting. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, there's a contrast, isn't there, how traditionally Indian players go about playing spin. You wouldn't say that they're huge sweepers of the ball. Generally, they very much play a vertical bat rather than horizontal bat, forward and back. That's generally the way that we've seen good players like Virat Kohli. Very rare that you see him sweep, for example. But you're right, Rohit tried a couple of reverses, and in the nets, they were certainly practicing it a couple of days out of this test match. And that also may have been for their bowlers as well, because the way that Duckett and Pope swept quite brilliantly in this game, maybe their bowlers have said to their batters, could you just, practice some sweeps so we can get into the rhythm of how the pace that we should be bowling and how to bowl when batters are sweeping and reverse sweeping. So there may be a bit of both there. I'm not sure we'll see an absolutely dramatic change in India's approach with their batting this game, because you can't just, if you're not generally a sweeper or reverse sweeper, you can't just do it the next day. That the Duckett and the Pope brilliance is on the back of lots of practice and perfecting those kind of shots. They're not shots that, unless you're an absolute genius like A.B. de Villiers, that you can just go into a match without practicing, I wouldn't have thought.
And did you see that stat? I mean, the world's just flipped around in the last couple of days. That Joe Root has more test runs than the whole Indian squad. I mean, the days of turning up and seeing Tendulkar on the opposition or Dravid and looking at their stats. So if you think of when Akshar Patel walked off that field, was it day 3 or whatever?
Yeah,
three boundaries in a row, and India way ahead in the game, and everyone going, here we go again, India, England. To where we are now, it just shows a week is a long time in Test match cricket.
Yeah, no, I think that might have been day 2. I can't remember, but I mean, I was thinking day 3 when Akshar Patel dropped the catch, actually, of Ollie Pope with India's lead 67. And I felt, we touched on this in the last podcast, that India were very sloppy, both with their batting in the first innings when they should have buried England, and then that catch. And what perhaps the final topic that we'll talk about here now is just amazing how in such a short period of time, sentiment has shifted in this tour. I think we both agreed that England were second favourites when they came out here, that India were very strong favourites on home turf and with the team that they had. But then you had Virat Kohli dropping out, a huge loss, some sloppy cricket from India and a loss in the first test. And then, of course, the injuries to Ravindra Jadeja and KL Rahul on that final day. So I feel as though that it's completely turned around now, and that England come into this second test in a very, very strong position. The Leach injury has just taken a bit of gloss off that, and England now have got their own, inexperience to deal with. But, you look at India's team now, Nas, and in particular the batting, it feels as though there are opportunities there for England to build on that first win in Hyderabad.
Yeah, but we know you don't get to the top in Indian cricket without being a serious player. You think of the amount of players and layers. You think of those Maidans of Mumbai, and do that for a country. Karun Nair, 300 when he came in against England, not really been seen as a test match cricketer since. So anyone who comes in, you look at Sarfaraz Khan's stats in first-class cricket, he's been knocking down that door for a long time, and he's burst through that door. Whether he plays or not, we will see. They have a slight issue with the balance of their side with no Jadeja, number 1 all-rounder in the world. He's the biggest loss, I think. I see you covered your back. I read you in the paper the other morning, and you'd literally written off the series. You'd literally said this is now going to be 5-0 England. England spinners are great. The selection is great. Every young lad, you could literally pick my son and he would go in and get 7 for in the next test match. Every young lad that comes in is going to get 7 for or 100 or both. And then in your last paragraph, you sort of dragged it back with, oh, by the way, remember, this could go the other way. So you have covered your back a little bit, haven't you?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think we all got a little bit giddy after Hyderabad. It was such an astonishing game.
Of Hyderabad.
The heist of Hyderabad. And as you know, as ever, there are plenty of England fans who are in Hyderabad who've come down here to Vizag. We were on the plane with them the other day, and they were on an unbelievable high. And yeah, perhaps I did get carried away a little bit, although I do feel that the sentiment has shifted dramatically from where we were perhaps the day we landed in India and the day that we got the news about Virat Kohli. From that point onwards, things have switched, and I do feel that England have got a very good chance now. But as you rightly say, in a country with 1 billion people and hundreds of millions that play cricket seriously, to get to the India team, to get to the level that you find yourself in the India team, there's a kind of Darwinian process, if you want to call it here, and the cream will rise to the top. So India are going to put out a strong team, whatever it is. But I just feel that there is some inexperience in that batting lineup. It's a long way from facing the Fab Four of old, where you looked at it and thought, blimey, we're going to be in the field here for 2.5 days. You feel as though there are some opportunities for England there to exploit. Anyway, that's all ahead of us.
What are you doing?
The next 5 days.
Are you doing, Vizag? What is your plan?
Well,
have you getting your speedos on and going for a little swim or something? What a thought!
No, I haven't been in the sea. There's a submarine museum just down the coast. I was thinking of maybe going there this afternoon. And I have to tell you, I had the best biryani I've ever had last night. I'm staying in the Gateway Hotel, which is opposite from the Novotel, where all the teams are staying, and the better off kind of journalists and supporters are staying. So I'm being humble in the Gateway, but I have to say that their biryani is absolutely top class. It was a bit fiery, but you'd have enjoyed it last night if you were here.
Enjoy the submarine museum, living the dream.
Well, India's hope sinking fast on the back of that submarine joke. Anyway, we'll be watching the Test match. We're going to do a postscript after it, depending on how long the game lasts and what happens. So we're looking forward to that. I'll catch you on the far end, Nas, and I hope you're getting up at 4 o'clock to watch.
Enjoy.